Hello BookTube. Today on my 2023 library tour, I will be continuing with classics, canonical, modern, and contemporary fiction, poetry, drama. I'm going to be finishing off this double bookcase, and let's get going because there are two shelves I want to get to today. So the first book up is Duck's Newburyport by Lucy Ullman. This is a big chunkster of a book that came out in 2019. And I have it in my collection because it is one of the 10 contemporary classics I must redeem. That's a project in which I read 10 candidates for a contemporary classic that I've previously bailed on. I bailed on this in early 2020 before the pandemic, and I'm hoping I have better luck. We shall see. um, Now, a book that I actually do like, that I have in my collection, is A Girl, Woman, Other by Bernardine Evaristo. This won the Booker Prize in 2019. Let's forget that it's a co-winner. But this is a novel about a group of women and who are all interconnected, and one non-binary individual. And it's really good. I'm quite surprised and pleased that I like it as much as I do. It was one of the best books I read last year. Well, fiction-wise, which isn't really saying much, but anyway. Next is a book that I hope to get to sometime this year, and that is The Trees by Percival Everett. This is part of my 12 TBR, and I picked this up largely because I have wanted to read Percival Everett for years now, and I haven't gotten around to reading him. So hopefully I'll get him in April. I was going to get to The Trees this month, but in February, but February Fantasy Stories happened, and I decided to double up on the fantasy for my 12 TBR. But anyway, the next two books are by William Faulkner. This is As I Lie Dying, which I've had for years. I picked this up for a class on Southern literature, or Southern American literature, and it's the one that I kept. I quite like this novel, although it's been far too long since I've read it. The other Faulkner I have is a reacquisition. I used to have The Sound and the Fury in the Norton Critical edition, but I got rid of it and eventually picked this up from the Friends of the Library Sell Nook, because this is actually, I think, yeah, Waco High School's DXS copy. Next is another book in the 10 Contemporary Classics I Must Redeem. Everything is Illuminated by Jonathan Safran Foer. I read this and bailed on it in I think it's SFO airport in San Francisco. But anyway, it's been a while since I've had a go at it, and I would really like to have a go at it. Next is a book that I've had for a while that I haven't really read, which I really should correct that. That is The Forsyte Saga by John Galsworthy. I read the first book in the series. It's a trilogy years ago and really liked it, but I never kept up with it, and I really should. Next is another Bell Redemption shot, even though it's not for my 10 Contemporary Classics I Must Bell Redeem. This is Soul Mountain by Gao Xinjiang. I had this in, I don't remember if I picked it up in high school or in college, but I didn't last too long, and I've been wanting to have another go at this book for a while now. There were a number of Nobel Prize winners in literature, that I've built on that I would like to have a second or another go at. Um, Next is Our Lady of the Flowers by Jean Genet. And then I have two books by Nadine Gordimer. This is Berger's Daughter. Uh, I in 2017 I had about 3 goes at this book, and I kind of much like with Soul Mountain, I would like to have another go at it. I've also had some goes at My Son's Story by Nadine Gordimer, and I would like to have another go at this in the future. This is another The Excess Library copy. Sticking with the Nobel Prize, this is The Rack by Günter Grass, which I had when I was in high school and read and remember quite liking. And I wanted to have it back, so I picked it up last year, and hopefully I'll have a go at it sometime this year. This is The Recent East by Thomas Grattan. Next is a book that will at some point be sent out of my collection, and that is What Belongs to You by Garth Greenwell. This is just a crappy novel, and it's basically the only story Garth Greenwell seems to be able to tell. Anyway, next is Dream Boy by Jim Grimsley. This is a novel that I've had for years, since I was in high school. Read it in high school. I haven't read it since, though. I mean, that is one thing that I need to really think about is should I keep books that I liked but that I haven't reread in 20 years or thereabouts? Or what? Or should I keep them because I will eventually miss them? As a lot of my books that I've gotten rid of, but I do end up missing them at some point. There's something I do need to think about as I work through this tour and think about clearing out my collection. Keeping with Jim Grimsley, this is Boulevard. I think this is his last realistic novel. Jim Grimsley, he hasn't really written much in the last 15, 20 years or so, which is a shame. But anyway, so I had this book for years, and I finally read it in, I think, 2019 or 2020. But I'm not entirely satisfied with that reading, so I might come back to it at some point. Next is a book that I kind of regret having picked up, and that is Life Drawing by Michael Grumley. I'm not entirely sure why I picked it up. I think a booktuber recommended it, but I don't remember who. But I don't remember liking it all that much. I don't know if I build on it or not, but yeah. Next is We So Seldom Look on Love by Barbara Gowdy. This is a short story collection that I had previously, and I'd been thinking about the last year or two and picked up. I think it was in 2021 that I picked this up. Although, again, I haven't gotten around to it yet. Next up is Cody by Keith Hall. Again, I'm not entirely sure why I have this in my collection, or still, because I know it was a recommendation from a booktuber, but I didn't really get on with it. But maybe I'll give it another go before I decide what to do with it. The next book is by Scott Heim. This is Mysterious Skin. This is his debut. Scott Heim is one of those writers who's written about 3 or 4 novels, and he really hasn't written anything in years. But anyway, this is his first one. It's very brutal. I've had it since high school. Probably I was a little too young to have read it at the time. Well, maybe not, I don't know. But anyway, although when I came back to it a few years ago, I didn't actually get on with it all that well. But I mean, this one's a bit of a problem because I can't necessarily get rid of it because I actually had a nosebleed while I was reading it when I was younger, and yeah, so I'd probably have to, if I did get rid of it, I'd have to throw it out. Because it does have like a nosebleed stain on it. This is Danger from the Danes by Andrew Holloran, a classic gay fiction. I read it in high school or maybe college and haven't come back to it since, which is sometimes a recurring frame, like a recurring theme in my collection. So the next few books are all by Alan Hollinghurst, pretty much his entire oeuvre. This is his first novel, The Swimming Pool Library, which I picked up in San Francisco, and I periodically come back to when I have a desire to read all of Hollinghurst, which never goes well because I usually end up bouncing off of this one. Although last year I did have a bit more success, but not much. Because while I did manage to reread The Swimming Pool Library, I ended up bailing on The Folding Star. Although I did get further this time than I did the last time I read it. But anyway. What annoyed me is that I also ended up bouncing off of The Spell, which I've had forever. This was one of, well, I think this was the first Hollinghurst novel I picked up. I was in high school, and it took me a few Bell Redemption attempts to finally actually read it, although the last time I had to go at it, I did Bell on it again. Next is his Booker Prize winning novel, which I still have not gotten to, and I really should. And that is The Line of Beauty, which I don't remember where I bought this from. Because I could have sworn I bought it from Book People, but I don't see the Book People sticker. And maybe I picked it up in San Francisco because I think there was, yeah, I think maybe I did. Because I don't think that bookstore, because there was a gay bookstore where Castro intersected with Market Street at the time. I think it was a different light, but it might have been a different one that I would go into occasionally. And I know that's where I picked up The Sluts. So maybe I picked it up there and just thought I'd picked it up at Book People. And next is The Stranger's Child, which I picked up because I wanted to finish off my Hollinghurst collection, and haven't gotten around to it yet. And finally, Hollinghurst's most recent work, The Sparsholt Affair, which I picked up a few years ago from Powell's. I read it shortly after it came out and didn't quite get on with it. I bailed on it. So yeah, but I kind of wanted to revisit Hollinghurst's work, so that's why I have them all. Although, again, I never had much success. Next is Swimming in the Dark by Tomasz Jedrzejewski. I picked this up in 2021, and I didn't get on with it, sadly. I love the cover, but Moving on to this final shelf, I have first a book that is possibly going to be my favorite fiction of 2023, although given how young the year is, it's perhaps not saying much. Who knows? But anyway, this is The Seven Moons of Molly Almeida by Shehan Karunatalika. This is a wonderful novel. It just won the Booker Prize last year, and I really enjoyed it. So I don't bail on everything I read that's not history. Oh, this is going to be interesting. So the next few books are by Yasunari Kawabata. This is The Master of Go, my favorite of Kawabata's novels. This one and most of the Kawabata I got from a professor who taught a class on an introduction to Japanese culture. And I did a paper on Kawabata, and before I graduated, he gifted me a number of his Kawabata paperbacks. So I have The Master of Go. The Sound of the Mountain, which is really good. Beauty and Sadness. The House of the Sleeping Beauties. The Old Capital, which I remember being really good. It's been a while since I've read it, though. And the one that I've had for ever since high school, and that is Thousand Cranes, which is the one I did a paper on. And it's been a while since I've read it. Really need to go back to it. Next is a book that was long-listed, if not short-listed, for the Women's Prize. Again, I had a bit of a yen to, or a desire to read some of the big literary prizes, and this one ended up being picked for the Women's Prize. That is Build Your House Around My Body by Violet Cuppersmith, which I'm planning on reading at some point for my 12 TBR. Next is a novel by an author I've wanted to read for a long time, and that is Milan Kundera. This is his novel Immortality. And I'm sorry I'm kind of in this way, but it's the bottom shelf, and I'm having to do some moves like contortionism to get at these books. Next is a novel I picked up for my America 20 project back in 2020. This is The Answers by Catherine Lacey. Catherine Lacey is an author I long wanted to read, but I did not get on with this book at all. Another book I did not get on with and that I picked for my America 20 project is Crooked Little Heart by Anne Lamott, which I've had several goes at, and I really need to just either one last go or just send her on her way. I say that and I don't really send anybody on their way. Next is another book I picked up for my America 20 project, The Namesake by Jhumpa Lahiri, which I also did not quite get on with. Next is a book that I had in my collection years ago and decided I wanted to pick up, and that is The Collected Stories of David Levitt. I remember quite enjoying one of his short story collections. And I think I might have read, I've read A Place I've Never Been, but I don't remember if I've read the other ones in this collection or not. Because I had A Place I've Never Been on its own. Because that was one of the first David Levitt novels or works by David Levitt I've ever had. And I had a few, but I since got rid of them. Although, again, I kind of sort of would like them back, but I don't know. I really need to think about that. Next is The Surrendered by Chang Li, which I also picked for my America 20 project, in which also did not turn out well. Next is the one work of the Western that I have, probably the greatest, won the Pulitzer Prize, Lonesome Dove by Lyric McMurtry, which I picked up last year for June on the Range, and which did not go well at all for me. I bailed on it, and I don't quite see what the appeal of it is, but anyway. Next is a bind-up of 3 novels by Colin McKenna. His London novels, which I picked up largely because it has Absolute Beginners in it, which is a novel that I've long wanted to read, and I've had several goes at, and they've not worked out for me. So maybe I should have another go at it, or send it on its way at some point. Next is a reacquisition. This is Midak Ali by Naguib Mahfouz, which took me a reading or two before I finally got into it. And I picked it up because, again, I'm really wanting to revisit a number of the Nobel Prize winners that I've either read or bailed on. Next is another novel I picked up for my America 20 project. This is The Great Believers by Rebecca Mackay. I picked this up from Fabled Bookshop, a independent bookstore in Waco, Texas, and I did not get on with this either. Next is one of the first books I picked up from Book People. This is And Their Children After Them by Nicola Matthew. I did not get on with this. Next is another reacquisition. This is Maybe the Moon by Armistead Maupin. This is one of his few novels that's not set in the Tales of the City series. And I remember quite liking it. But it's been a while since I read it. Next is The Lesser Bohemians by Amir McBride, which I've tried several times and I did not get into. This is Charming Billy by Ellis McDermott, which is a novel that I'm quite fond of. I read it in 2017 and quite liked it and wanted a copy, so I picked it up and read it in, I think, 2020, and I still like it. Not as much as I did the first time, but I go back and forth on whether or not I want to read more of McDermott's work. Next is another novel I enjoyed from last year, that is Hurricane Season by Fernanda Melchor. This was really good. I'm thinking seriously about picking up her most recent work, Paradise, but I don't know for sure. Next is a novel that I've had in my collection and didn't quite get on with, but would like to have another go at, and that is An Arrow's Flight by Mark Merlis. Steve Donahue has talked about it several times on his channel. Next are 2 novels, or 2 works by Yukio Mishima. First up is Acts of Worship. This is a collection of short stories that I've had for ages, since I was in high school. And I haven't really read it since then. Next is The Temple of the Golden Pavilion, which I picked up a year or 2 ago. And I think it was maybe last year. And I've been meaning to get to, because I would like to read more of Mishima's work. Next is Into by North Morgan. This is a gay novel from 2017 or 2018, and I don't remember it too fondly. And finally, on this double bookcase is Beloved by Toni Morrison. This is a classic of American literature, even though I have never quite gotten on with it. But maybe a Bell Redemption will work. Who knows? So that concludes these two bookcases that I have stacked on top of each other. Tomorrow I will conclude classics, canonical, modern, and contemporary fiction, poetry, drama by getting these two shelves. Well, this shelf and that shelf. And also add a little science fiction and fantasy because I'm using some of my Wheel of Time novels as a bookend for the second shelf here. So any booktube. I'll probably will be back later with a tag video, but if not, I'll see you tomorrow. So until then, thank you, booktube. Have a great afternoon and stay safe.